Hi everyone watching this video. My name is Timothy. I'm a software engineer. I love building up and I'm a lover of technology to use technology to solve both humanity and business problems. So I've used Python, Java, Angular, and some other JavaScript framework. I love using Flutter too for building my iOS and Android app. So, but what I have for you today is integration of a Springboot with a JavaFX application. Though there are many of my projects I've built on the JavaFX, but with a normal JPA and the native JDBC. But looking at what we have now, I have to find a way to say, oh, let me see how I can integrate a Springboot with a JavaFX application because Springboot make life easier for developer. You only need to focus on the business logic, the configuration from other environment settings of your app will be handled by the Springboot. So when I was reading online, I came across a waiver expect to integrate a JavaFX. So I've created a sample project. I equally watch some other tutorial and other videos and read some article. Then I know along the way there are errors. I resolved some errors and I came up. So I'm going to share the project. It's a working project. Is we share this thing. First of all, I created a database. I call it FX. I call it a Java FX. And then from this Java FX, I have a table there I call users. So as you can see, my users, the data password is not encrypted. It's a plain password, but you can go ahead and encrypt it. I have just this number of field: email, full name, password, country, cities, and the dates created. So I use my sim builder to build the login. I have the login, I have the sign up, and I equally have the dashboard here. If I've not closed it, I equally have the dashboard. So of course, you can go ahead and make your code design. This is just a rough sketch. The design is not looking good because I only focus on the logic side and the integration of the Springboot with JavaFX. So I'm going to walk you through the project. This is the project structure I came up with. I have a project here. The normal Springboot application always have this. This is the entry point for every Springboot application. So we are going to launch our JavaFX application from the Springboot application. Ordinarily, what we used to have before is to have this extend application where we have the main method here and launch it within this, because this one extend a JavaFX application. So whatever we have here, we are now going to launch it in the Springboot entry point here. So when you look at this, let me first explain some dependency that I use for the application. Now I'm using Java 11. You can use Java 12. You can use 12 or the higher version. But I recommend you can equally use Java 8 or 9. But I recommend to use Java 11. You must have this dependency there so that it will enable you to be able to integrate JavaFX with the Springboot. And this are JavaFX library. In Java 8, the JavaFX JavaFX is already in the JDK bundle, but in Java in JDK 11 you can't find it there. So, but you can have download, put the dependency here so that you make use of you'll be able to make use of JavaFX and the control FX too. JPhonics, if you want to add the JPhonics, you can put it here. If you had some favicon icon library, you can equally put the dependency here. This is JPA to enable me to be able to use extend some interface for persist. so that I'll be able to persist my object into the database. And this is the connector for the MySQL. And this Spring Boot security is not used. I don't need it now, but I only add it so that in case we want to add some security to the app. I'm going to produce another video where I'll demonstrate how to integrate the security. Here you have a loan book for money this is just for development purpose, and the test in case you want to carry out one test or the other on the application. So those are the dependencies I use. I equally add the Spring Boot starter, which is normal for every Spring Boot applications. So aside the dependencies I have here, I have a config file here, exception writer. You can check it. The exception writer is for us to be able to create a custom exception. But the major thing I want to explain here is the router here. When you look at the router here, I created a generic way to navigate to route through your application where we have the class here. You have the action that triggered the routing here. And I equally say, okay, get a controller. A situation where you don't want to route, you just want to get JPhonics, you just want to get the content of some design. Let's say this one doesn't have a controller, you only design it so that you add it as part of a display of let's say in your dashboard area. When you triggered this, you add it as part of a display of the content. Maybe you add it within your content. That is the essence of this method, but I've not used it. In the next video, I'm going to complete it. You are going to see how I use it, but I only make use of this. You can see that I auto-wire this. At lazy loading, it will allow every other component to load. So I don't just auto-wire it so that every other resources that this guy needs should be ready before I can say, oh, you proceed into action. So I have the controller for my view here. I have the dashboard, logged in, and sign up controller. From here, when you look at here, this is my dashboard. This is the login. This is the sign up XML that has the view. If you look at them, you notice that here I make a reference to what? The sign up controller. And the sign up controller, say for example, in the sign up controller, what you majorly look at is the FMX. The FMX, I have a UI that I already I map it to this, so that by the time I route it, I'll be able to get access. By the time I treat anywhere I call this method, I pass the controller there. So if I pass the controller there, then the controller will be able to know that, oh, this controller is going to serve this FXMS. That's the essence of this. And the action that triggered this is what I'm going to pass. You are going to see how I pass through it now. And first off, and in addition to this, in my controller, take for example, like a sign up, I auto-wire my service. So this is normal Spring Boot service. I created a service util where I injected my repo. And from the service util, I now have a service. So I now injected my service util into the service so that I carry out all this crud operation. So if you don't understand this, maybe I may have to produce another tutorial on Spring Boot. You can leave a message on my YouTube channel so that I'll be able to know if I should go ahead to produce another video to explain the concept of all this Spring Boot JPA integration. But this is normal Spring Boot approach of persisting objects into the database. So if you look at it, we have the save where you call this save. Here you have the JPA repository. This is normal Spring Boot repository. You extend this interface so that you'll be able to have access to all the methods under this interface. Like in my service here, this method is already, we already have it interface: save, update, delete, deliver ID. We have all those methods that come from this interface. So you can study more of a Spring Boot because my tutorial is here. The tutorial, this tutorial is about integration of the Spring Boot with Javafx, not just it's not, it does not based on the Spring Boot application itself. So this repository, you may decide to remove this repository because it's not really necessary. Now, when you now look at in my controller, take for example, in the login controller, I want to log in. What you should notice is I inject this and equally inject this, so that the purpose of this for me to be able to move to another screen. And when you look at this one is the repository for the I've already created. You can go there and study the method we have there. And you can see now that on the sign up, what I only did is I saw router.navigate, navigate to this sign up, and this is the event that triggered the navigation. So when you now look at this, so it means that it's going to route me to this FMX, to this design, the design I have here. So that's why we map it. If you uncomment this, is not going to work. It's going to be returning none. So the system needs to know that, oh, I'm going to, whenever this controller is being called, I'm going to route to this. So that is what that when you look down to sign up, I have a way to route to the app. So you can study this. This is the one that handle the registration. This is the one that handle the email valid. That's an email validator. So that is just a summary of the project that I did. And here in the sign up, let me show you. Let me close order so that I will give more view of the sign up. Like in the sign up controller here, I have this method. Based on my design, I retrieve all the feed from the design. I retrieve all these feed from the design. Here, I trade through the list of all this feed. I made this sign up to be compulsory so that when you click and you didn't feel anything you didn't feel anything, it will prompt you that, oh, all the fields are what? Please complete all the form. So that you'll be able to complete the form and post it. This is just normal validation, but you can have your own special way of validating. And you can see now that after creating the whole of this, what I did, I initiate my user here. I set every vid value here. Then I save it into the database. Of course, when you save, you may decide to log in. I'm going to show us the design now, but what you need to take notice, a Spring Boot, we used to have a repo, we have a service, we used to have the service implementation, which I did not, I just tried to implement directly from here. But here, this is where you have a controller for JavaFX. This is where I put my JavaFX design. This is where I put the style. And if I have any images, I can put it here. So I'm going to run this as normal Spring Boot application so that you see how everything look like. So this is it. And if I say, oh, I already have account, it will route me here. No account yet, it will come here. So I'm going to create another account now. Let's say, okay, Timothy, Odofin. So I'm going to use my email address as Odofin@fordsoft.tech. I just want to copy this so that if I want to, I'm going to use my name as Odofin. My country, let me decide. Oh no, let me just decide to say, oh, I'm from Nigeria. City, Lagos. So if I register this, you can see registration successful. I may now decide to go here and say, okay, I want to log in into the application. Boom, I have the record here. So I've created this one before. I've created this before, and you can see that I add a little style. If you check out the style, you will see how I did a little style. Though I borrowed some sample design from online tutorial before I came up with this. If you select a record, you will see that the record will pop up here. You may decide to update it. If I decide to update it, let's say, oh, I changed this to the password to something else. And if I save, please enter a valid full name. Oh, that's a validation I put in place there. You can equally reset the validation, and I may reset the feed here, and I can log out. I may decide to log in with another account. So this is just to see how the Spring Boot can be integrated with JavaFX, but I didn't go deep on Spring Boot or neither go deep on the JavaFX. I only show how we can integrate the two together so that we enjoy the the flexibility that Spring Boot have, and then we can see how to equally add it with JavaFX. So I'm a lover of a Spring Boot. I've used Spring Boot for so many years, and I've created so many microservices with Spring Boot. And I love using Spring Boot with other framework as well to see how I can integrate my Spring Boot with other framework like Kafka, like Apache Camel, like JMS, like WebSocket for messaging. So if you have any question, you can leave a message for me on my YouTube channel. I will respond to it. And if you want me to produce another video on the JavaFX tutorial, I will do that. And likewise on the Spring Boot tutorial, I will do that as well. So thank you.